player is an object. The property health, and property health equals a number. So here, when we're doing player health, we're pulling out the number from the object. But now this is now just a number, and it's not related to player at all. It's a reference to just a number, and it's not a reference to. The moment we're not operating directly on the health property of the player, we're not choosing the health property of the player. So what we need to do.
Let's say that within that function,
All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So today we'll start with some recap activities for jQuery, and then we'll jump on to a couple of new methods related to timing in JavaScript. Okay. All right. So the first activity that we'll start off is 04, and it's called coin flip. Let's take a look at the README file. So you should already have like a template. It already has some code with comments that you need to fill out. Again, this is just using jQuery, but you will notice that it doesn't have the jQuery added over here. So please make sure you add the jQuery method. So this is again a game that you are playing with the computer. So you're going to choose heads or tails. If your choice and the computer's choice matches, that means it's a win. If they don't match, then it's a loss. Okay? I want you guys to go over the HTML, look at the comments, and we'll take like 15-20 minutes to solve this exercise. Okay? The README is pretty descriptive. Take a look at the unsolved one. See how would you solve this this program. And then halfway through, a little towards the end, I'll kind of start solving the unsolved one. So if you're stuck somewhere, you can take a look at it and see how to proceed.
after you sign in,
Oh, actually there is jQuery. It's added towards the end. I'm just going to move this out from this file. Coinflip.js, and let's see, where's our script? This is our script all the way here. So I'm going to move this out, remove this for files. Okay. Let's see, missing the document.ready function. Okay. So $, document ready. Okay. Document.ready takes a callback function. Callback function. Oops. And I'm going to move this towards the end, so everything is wrapped inside the callback function. Okay. Now I can move this on the top inside the head and then include my JS file. Source. Okay. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, shows up. I don't see any errors in the console. Okay. All right. So I just separated the JavaScript file for this exercise. Let's see. I'm going to change these to let.
Can you zoom in one more?
Yeah.
Bigger on the monitors. Thanks.
You hear if you guys have questions on anything. Who's heard?
So refer back to the random number function and find out how would you generate 0 or 1. You just need like two possible outcomes. So step one, declare and initialize a variable named random number to either 0 or 1. So we need to create a variable, let random number. So we need it to be random. So math dot random. Okay, this gives me random number from 0 to 1 but never 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and so I need number between 0 and 1. Okay, so there's two possibilities. I'm going to multiply this by 2. Okay, this will give me random numbers from 0 to 1.9999, and then we can use our floor method to bring it to the nearest lowest number. Let's go ahead and test this out. Let's see, how do I test this out? Console log random number to see if this is working, and then so this is a function. Is this being called? I think we already have this one is resolved. So flip that coin 0. This means if I press heads, it should call this function, and this should output my random number. Okay, so heads, I get a 1. Try a few more times, still 1, 1, 1. Oh, 0. It's kind of getting worried. It's not never going to come to 0. Okay, so I'm going to get either 0 or 1, and that's the first step. So this is working. I'm going to remove this console log because I've tested my random number and it works. Okay, the next would be if else condition. If random number is equal to 0, then you're going to show this image. Else, you're going to change the image to this one. Find the div with an ID of coin image. Okay. Okay, there it is. Any questions on step 1? Are we good on at least step 1?
The other thing you can do
No?
is step 1.
Very top? These are already given to us. I didn't add those. So you guys are on step 0. Yes, sir. Okay. Step 0 good? Good?
Did anyone use math.round?
Oh yeah, map.round is also a good one. All right, step number 2. If random number is equal to 0. So if condition, if random number is equal to 0. So let's move these comments inside it. Find the div with an ID of coin image. How do we find in jQuery? Dollar and then just the class name. So it is hash, it's an ID, so it's going to be hash coin image. Replace its HTML with an image tag containing this image. Okay, so we can use the .html method and then replace its HTML with an image tag. So we are going to add an image tag. Okay, image tag doesn't have a closing, so this is the complete image tag, and it's saying replace it with this image. And the image, how do we put the image? Using the source attribute. Bring this to a new line so I can fix this. Okay. So it's getting confused because I have this code and this code. Either you can add a escape character or replace this with single quotes. Let's see if I can use escape character. Okay. I think that worked. Or you can replace this with single quotes. We'll run it and see. So find the div with an ID of coin image. I did that. Add to this HTML image source this one. So if I click this, if I keep clicking the heads and it comes up 0, I should see this image. Let's see. Okay, there it is. So looks like this is working. Step number 2. So at this point only the heads button is working. Why is it working? Because if you already looked at the code at the bottom, so this is already completed for you. So whenever you click the heads button, it should call this function over here. Okay, flip that coin, but only the heads works. So that's why I'm only pressing the head. The tail doesn't do anything because we don't have the code behind it right now. If you see, it's empty. We have to complete that. So for testing purposes, that's why only this image shows up. So that's step number 2. Oh, well, step number 2 is still not complete. We are missing the else. Let's see. Else, which means if the random number is 1, replaces HTML with a different image. So same code, just inside an else. So that would be else. And I'm going to end my else here. Format it. Yes. Yes, yes. So if you see the syntax as it should be this. It should be backslash and double quotes. Yeah. Yes. So these are called escape characters, and they are used. For example, in this case, if I remove these backslashes, our line is getting confused. It says I'm starting a string over here. Okay. It kind of ends over here, which is wrong. That's not the case. And then there are two more double quotes, right? So basically, what I want to say is this thing is one string, right? So how do I do it? Either you can replace this with single quote. That's one solution. Okay. But I want to be consistent in my code. So instead of putting single quotes, I want double quotes. And the other way to do it, if you really want double quotes, you can add a escape character, which is this. And what this does is it's going to consider this as a whole string. It's not contained, it has nothing to do with it. It's just the escape character, yeah. So anything you want to skip, this comes before that. So else is exactly the same as this one. The only difference is it's a different image. You can copy paste that one, but I'll just type this as well so you guys can see again. So dollar, I need to find the div with an ID of coin image. Okay, so hash coin image. Oops, I'm missing an E. Okay, and then dot html function, and then you put the same thing over here, add an image tag. Okay, this will add the image tag, and then I'm going to have source, which is going to be the um, next image. Alright, I'm going to use the escape characters here as well. This will skip and this will skip, and then my image source goes in between these two double quotes, which is here. Format this. I'm going to move this to the next line so that you guys can see it. Okay. Now the other way would have been a little bit longer way would have been that you create a variable called image tag, and then dollar. You create image, okay, and then you go ahead and add image tag dot add attr, and then you can add a source attribute, right, and then the image, and then you're going to append it to this one, dot append, and then you append your image tag over here. Okay, that's the little bit longer way, and that's what we have seen. But I feel like if you guys have been practicing, it's kind of time to go a shortcut. So you can use this one, and this kind of does the same thing. Okay, if you used this syntax, that's also fine. That does the same thing. All right, it just takes up 3 lines, and this one is just 1 line, but it's equivalent to this one. So if you are still used to this syntax, that's still fine. Okay, basically we are creating an image tag and adding a source attribute to it, and this would have the link to that image. All right, and then you append it to the div tag. Okay, so that's step number 2. So this time, if 0 comes up, I should see a heads, and if 1 comes up, I should see tails. If I have the right back and front. Okay, so let's test heads. Okay, if I press tail, is this correct? What is not added? What am I missing? Yeah, but I pressed heads.
But it's randomizing that number. But it's only at the head button.
Oh, okay.
So hit
I see.
heads again and it'll keep randomizing.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So if I did a console log for random number 0, it would have assured me that if, So in this case, it's actually hitting the else. That's why this shows up. Okay. And there's my heads. Okay. Any questions on step number 2? All right. All right, step 3. Again, if condition, this time you are checking if the result is equal to the random number. This is the winning condition. So if they both are equal, update the variable, so wins plus plus, and then find the div with an ID win lose, update it with an h2 of winner, otherwise you're going to do this. Okay. Let's see, if result is equal to random number, right? What am I doing? I'm doing all these steps. I'm going to move this here. Increment wins by 1, so that would be wins plus plus. Okay. Find the div with an ID of win lose, updated with an h2 of winner. So it's going to be something like this. I'm going to have an ID, so it's going to be hash. Let's go back to our HTML. It's called win lose. I'm going to copy the ID. This is where I want to add the result. Update with an h2. Okay, so you're going to add the h2, use the HTML and add that h2 because there's nothing over here right now. So similar to the image one, I'm going to use the HTML method. This time it says add an h2. Okay. End tag for h2, and this should have the text winner. Okay. This, and then find the div with an ID of wins, update the value of the wins variable, which is this one. So this is inside and span, so I'm going to update the content of this span. Alright, so this would be, again, dollar, it's an ID, that's called wins. Okay. You can find the span tag, but this says updated with the value of the wins variable. So I'll find this comes, you can use the, I guess, dot text, and that should update the span tag, or you can just replace it with the different HTML. Up to you guys. What did generally people do? Text? Okay. Let's try the text one then. So dot text, and then just update with wins plus plus. Okay. So if the result is equal to, this should come up. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Wins. Let's try one more time too. It's kind of updating those. Okay. Same thing. Let's see, else. So let's write our else condition. What are we doing in else? We are incrementing losses by 1. So losses variable by 1. Okay. And then same thing, win lose HTML. I'm going to copy this. This time it's going to be loser. So because this. Okay. And then update the text. So something similar, but the different div, which is this one. Okay. So this time if I select, I should have both coming up. Susan wins, losses, there my losses are increasing. Oh, some of them are missing. So with that. Okay, winner, loser. All right, once we fix the tails, it should take care of the other ones. Oh, this. That's why. Yeah, let's try now. Loser, winner, winner. Oh, there we go. Now my count is correct. Okay, that's step number 3. Any questions on this? Very similar to the first one. This time we are incrementing a different div. Okay. Last step number 4. It's going to be similar to the heads one, right? What is heads doing? As soon as you click the heads, increases the head count, heads count, and then it looks up 2 different IDs and then goes ahead and updates that count. So let's go ahead and complete this one. Increment the tails count. It should be fairly simple. Tails count increased. Find the span and ID of tails chosen. Replace the HTML inside of the span with the tail count. So similar to this one. All right. So dollar. This is heads chosen. So I'm going to replace this with tails. Okay. And then text. Tails count. All right. Find the div with an ID of guess, updated with the word tails. So same as this one. Same guess ID. Okay, but this time it's tails. And the last one is you're going to call the function flip that coin, this time with the value 1 instead of 0. Okay, so this should be fully functional. Heads, then when, if I choose tails, okay, both of us choose tails, tails again, still, ooh, 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row. Yeah. All right, so that was the last step. Any questions? So this was kind of a recap. Any questions on this? Anything confusing? So in this, we looked at the same functions that we've been looking at, on-click functions, how to find IDs in jQuery. Let's see what else was here. If-else statements, no for loops here. And then using the same function, how do you add new tags, new HTML to your existing HTML? Okay. Any questions? Did everybody complete the exercise? Step 0, you guys good? All right. All right, moving on. Let's look at the next one. This also kind of still a recap, but this is the recap for our scope. So what I want you guys to do is work with somebody on your table. I'm not going to call out people for this one. It's the similar scope one, but this time I want you guys to take a look at it. And then make sure you understand and then answer the questions. All right, work with a partner, work with somebody or everybody on the table as a whole team, and then kind of answer these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions. Okay, we'll take 10-15 minutes, take a look at these. This is exercise number 5. Okay, again, this has to do with both scope and, well, actually this has nothing to do with the scope. It's basically with this keyword, this. Okay, remember the window object or the object, we're just making sure that we understand the distinction between which object is being called over here. Most of the stuff, if you run it, it will give you the answer, but I would recommend before you run this code, make sure that you understand what's going to happen and then run the code to to get that answer. If you run this code, it will answer question number 1, it will answer 2 also. Let's see, it should answer 3, you have to write some code, but for 4, it should answer, and then 5 and 6, you have to write some code. Okay, so before you run the code, discuss, make sure you understand what it's going to output, and then verify your answer by running the code. All right, let's go ahead and do this together. Let's start from the top. Number one, what will be console logged out? What is this in this case? Any answers? What is this referring to? What was that? Hmm? Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't hear. So this is referring to the window object. Okay. Any questions? Does everybody understand why this is referring to the window object? Because there's no other object over here, and this is basically the global. If there's no, this is just a function declaration. Again, remember this is a different syntax to write a function. This is equivalent of the way we do it. Okay, same syntax, just a different way to do it. Okay, so that this and this is referring to the window object. Why? Again, there's no object, there's no custom object over here, so at this point this is referring to the window object. Any questions on this? Does everybody understand that? The scope of this? Yes. This is referring to object, yes. So you will learn eventually everything in JavaScript is an object. So when you use the keyword this, it is referring to an object, yes. And what object? The window object, which is the global object that gets automatically included with JavaScript. Okay. Let's move on to this one. What about in this case? What is it? The button object. Anybody disagrees or saw something different? Yes. Are you talking about line number 37? No, what is the scope of this in this case? the scope of this is, right? Remember in jQuery, how were we referring to the dollar this attribute, right? So if you run this, it is actually referring to this thing. So let's go ahead and run this, and does it come up with the whole div tag, or is it like an oops? So this is the first one, and then you click. It refers to the whole thing. Okay. Remember from jQuery we've been using this, and the reason we've been using is to identify what element was clicked. Okay. The scope over here changes. Awesome. Let's look at any questions. Everybody good? All right. Let's look at the third one. So before we move on to the third one, line number 44, what is this referring to in this case? Huh? Right. So it is referring to the object Bob object. Okay. Why? Because the scope of this is this object now. Okay. If you understand this, this would be easier to complete. Now, how do we complete the full name? You can do a console log this dot first name plus this dot last name. Okay. So this will give you Bob Smith. Yes.
So just confirming, like, so the console.log this for line 44, so it refers to the closest object, not the function itself.
Right. It's referring to when you use this in a context of an object. Remember, this is inside this object. This refers to an object. Now, in the previous case, it was referring to a global object. Why? Because it's not inside any custom object, right? There's no object nearby. In this case, this is enclosed inside an object. So it starts from inside and kind of goes up. So this will look for something and see, hey, is there an object that I'm kind of wrapped around? Yeah, there is. Okay. In the above case, remember the scoping, it goes from child to parent. So this looks and sees, hey, is there an object nearby which I'm part of? And then you don't find an object. So this means I'm part of the window object, the global object. Okay. In this case, it finds this, so that's why this is referring to the object which it is enclosed in. Okay. And this is how you would console log the first and the last name. Okay. Here's the kind of newer syntax. I just want to show you guys because it's kind of really convenient to use. So let's suppose if I want to say this is first name, so I would have to do something like this: first name, and then plus this, then add a space here, and then do last name here. And then add a plus, right? This is how you would do it. Let's make sure in our console, and it kind of shows up like this. Oh, I missed a space, so I need to add a space here. Okay. Here's a different syntax. It's called template literals, and this is kind of included in the new version of JavaScript, which we all are on currently. So that's why it's going to work. So what you do is you use, these are called backticks. Okay, remember in Slack, if you're posting a code, use backticks, the same syntax over here. And then you can keep writing this as a string. So it's a first name. Okay, now if I want to include a variable, you can, the syntax is dollar and then curly braces like a function. Okay, this dot first name, this is going to be processed as a variable. Okay, and then you can say space last name dollar, this thing again, this dollar has nothing to do with jQuery. Okay, jQuery is dollar and parentheses. All right, This is dollar and curly braces. This is part of JavaScript. It has nothing to do with uh, jQuery. Okay, it's kind of, you see, it's a easier syntax in one line. I don't need plus and then make sure my quotes are complete. Just one-time quotes. Anything that has to be rendered as a variable, you put it inside dollar and then curly braces. Okay, again, this is called template literals. Okay, if you Google template literals, you will see the documentation from MDN, and you can refer back and see how this is actually used. Okay, React uses is a lot. Again, they use the latest stuff since we are on JavaScript 6. I thought I'll just introduce. It's kind of convenient and easy to use this versus having plus and all that stuff. Okay, but if you're used to this, please keep using this. But this is another nicer way to write the same thing. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. So, what about this one? So, Bob.whoisBob is going to call this function. Okay. Where is this function? This. All right. And since we're console logging this, it should give us the whole object, which is line number 44 over here. Okay. So it's console logging everything that is part of this object, which is two properties, which are first name, last name, and then there's a property called a function, which is whoisBob, and that's why this is what it is. Okay. This object includes two functions and two properties. All right. Two properties, first name, last name, and two functions are whoisBob and full name. Okay, and full name is the function that we just completed. Okay. Any questions? There, understand how this is working in this context? Okay, awesome. Let's do this one. Okay. Now, what is this referring to in this case? Just this. Forget about the first name. What is this in this context? Which object is it referring to? What was that? Window object, right? Excellent. Window object. And the reason is there's no object nearby. It's not part of any object. So it looks up and says this is a window object, the global object, right? Now, our window object has a property called first name and last name? It does not. Okay, if you really want, you can open this window object, kind of look through all of them and see if there's a property. Okay, so there's no first name, there's no last name property inside our window object. Okay, so that's the reason it says undefined and undefined, because you're trying to console log something which does not exist. Now, how do you fix it? You just create a variable called first name, choosing one, and then create a variable called last name, okay? What am I missing? How do you, did anybody get this working? It still shows me undefined. You did? What did you do? It shouldn't change anything. It's something different. What am I using to declare my variable? I'm using the let keyword. Right? What is the scope of let? You just okay. So the window object is global, which is part of all the JavaScript. When we use this means it's referring to the window object, right? Which is not just, it is even outside this file. Remember the let keyword, what it does? It limits your scope. It's still global, but it's limited to this file. Okay, so this is actually referring to the window object. So anything that you declare with the let keyword It's just stuck over here. It's just part of this, right? Your window object has no idea what this is. And remember the var keyword, that's how dangerous it is. It is part of literally the global window object. And that's why it shows up over here. Now if you look up your window object, if you open this window object over here, you will see two properties got added, first name and last name. That might not be the intention, but that's what happened. Now your global window object actually has two properties, first name and last name. Let's see if this is refreshes, or do I need to console log that again? You see over here, first name shows up over here. Okay, so this is your global window object that you can modify, you can do anything with it, and it actually included these two properties. Now that might be the intention, that might not be the intention, but you see the difference between let and var. That's why we kind of encourage let, because so that I don't unintentionally modify something which I'm not looking for, right? I don't see a use case where I would be modifying a window object. So most probably this is some kind of a mistake on my part that I'm using var and then unintentionally kind of change the whole window object. Okay, there might be a case at this point. I don't know what case that might be, that I want to modify the whole window object and include my two properties, right? Okay, so be careful, understand the differences. That's the use case for let and var. If you declare this with let, the scope is limited to this file and nobody else can refer to these objects. Okay, if you use var, any other file which is included in your HTML or a window object, they can all see these variables. Okay, all right, whether you declare these variable inside or outside, it doesn't matter. Why? Because at this point, this is visible even outside the function or within the function. All right. All right. Any questions? Good. Oops. Everybody good? All right. So we are going to look at. This was still the recap. So now we are going to look at two new functions, which are global functions. When I say global function, this means they are part of which object? They're part of the window object, right? Everything is part of something, is part of some object. When we talk about global objects that are built into JavaScript, global functions, global objects, they are all part of your window object, right? But JavaScript understands these global functions. That's why you don't have to put the keyword window. Otherwise, if it didn't understand, you would have to say window dot and then something, okay? And this is uppercase W. This is exactly the name of this object. For example, your alert function, right? I don't have to say, I just have to do this. Oops. Right? Now alert is not part of my file. It's not a function that I have declared. This means it's part of the global object, right? This is a global function. So this means alert is actually part of the window object. All right, so this is similar. These both are same thing, and if you do window dot, you will see that the alert will kind of show up somewhere. Oh, doesn't. Let's see. Oops. Oh, there it is. Okay, but JavaScript understands this, so that's why you don't have to, this kind of redundant, you don't have to put the name of the object over here. Okay, so any JavaScript function that you see that you have not declared, that's an indication that those are your global functions. So two such functions, we will take a look at it. These are related to time. Okay, so for example, you will see in your next homework also, timing. When you're making a web page, for example, you are making a test taking application. All right, what happens is exam shows up with 10 questions and they have to solve those 10 questions in like 15 minutes. Okay, and then in the sites you will see a counter going up, the time shows up, starts from 15 and there's a countdown and goes up to 0, and that's when your time is up. Okay, So those things are coming from timer functions which are built into JavaScript. Okay, so those are the two functions that we are going to look at today. Let's see. All right. The first function is called timeout, and some of you guys have already seen this. I know I saw on Slack people were asking some questions related to it, so that's why I know some people have used it, but I want to now clarify and kind of show you guys how this actually works. All right, so I have my index.html, and then I have my JavaScript file. Again, you will notice there's no jQuery. All right, these are pure JavaScript functions. It has nothing to do with jQuery. All right, so the first function is set timeout JavaScript. Okay, you see the windows as part of the global function. The function is called set timeout, and then it has two arguments that you need to pass. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Set, oops. It's called set timeout. Okay, and it takes two arguments. The first argument is a function. Remember on Saturday we covered you can pass functions as arguments. Okay, so the first argument is a function. First argument is a function. Okay, and the second argument is a number. Okay, a number that defines milliseconds. Okay, milliseconds or ms. Okay, and the conversion is that 1 second is equal to 1000 milliseconds. Okay, but any number that you pass in as a second argument, JavaScript function set timeout is going to consider that as milliseconds. Okay, so the first thing is a function, right? So let's go ahead and declare a function. I'm going to create a function, call this function in set timeout. Okay, this is my function name. It does not take any parameters. Okay, it's a function with no parameters. All right, let's console log. This is called from inside this function. Okay, so I have a function that just console logs some text, and I'm going to pass this function inside my set timeout. Okay, so the first argument, it has to be a function, so pass this function. All right, since I'm passing, I don't need to put in parentheses. All right, so this is my function. The second argument is what I said was milliseconds. So let's say if I do 1000 by 3, what does this mean? How many seconds is that? 3 seconds, right? This is a kind of easier way so that I can visualize it. That's why I kind of use this syntax. Always, if I do, let's suppose 15, I can tell, oh, this means this is 15 seconds. But of course, you can just multiply it together and then put the same number over here. So it could be 3000 or it could be 15,000. This means 15 seconds. It's just more like a visual perspective. Okay, so what does this translate to? This means that set timeout function is saying that call this function after 3 seconds have passed. When you run this code, what's going to happen is is going to call this function after waiting for 3 seconds. That's what a set timeout does. Okay, now this function is doing a console log, so it's going to go ahead and console log that stuff. If it was doing something, it's going to do that. Okay, but the main point over here is a set timeout is saying that go ahead and call this function if this duration has passed. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. I want to make sure that my oh, HTML. I wasn't fast enough. No. Okay. So if I refresh, oops, you will see that my console log is going to take 3 seconds and then it's going to show up over here. Okay, let's increase the timeout so this time is going to take 5 seconds. It's going to add a delay and then show up this console log. Why? What is happening? After this program is run, it takes 5 seconds. So basically, set timeout, you use set timeout to add delays in your program. Okay? And the syntax is 2 arguments. The first argument is going to be a function, all right? And the second argument is number of milliseconds. Okay? And the delay, the second argument shows you the delay that you have to add to call this function. Right now on the screen, I'm adding a delay of 5 seconds. All right? Questions? Everybody understand set timeout? Okay? Good? All right. Here's the... Sure? Everybody good? All right. Now, remember we saw callback functions, right? Now I'm using a little bit different syntax, but totally you can do this as well. And these are called anonymous functions, remember? And then I can have this console log inside my anonymous function. And then this is going to go ahead and call this function after 5 seconds. Oh, something happened. What happened? Refresh. Oh, I did. Sure. Okay. Same syntax. This time I'm using a anonymous function to do the same thing. Okay. Is everybody clear on that? So if you see something this syntax, now we are able to recognize that we are using our anonymous function syntax over here. Okay. Still good? Any questions? All right, the next step. Here's the interesting part of this function, and this is important to understand. All right, so take a look at this. What is happening? Remember how does JavaScript works? It works like line by line, right? The first line, second line, then it executes the third line, and it kind of keeps going down. But these are kind of a little bit different functions, all right? What is happening is if you have any code that is after the set timeout function, chances are it's going to run first, okay? Set timeout function JavaScript is not going to wait for this function to complete. It's going to call this function and then skip over to the next line. So that's why you see the console log that I'm doing after the set timeout function gets logged first. Okay, very important point to note. So if you have any code that is dependent on this function to complete, and why am I saying that? I mean, you're going to have some logic inside it. Okay, if it is dependent on this function, it's not going to work. Why? JavaScript does not wait for your set timeout to complete. All right, it's going to go ahead, it's going to see set timeout, it's going to say, all right, I'm going to come back to it after 5 seconds. All right, it's not going to block over there. It's going to keep in memory, it's going to keep a tab on it that I have to come back to this function, right? and it's going to skip over to the next line, and the next line, and the next line. It's going to complete the whole file unless there's another timeout. Okay, and then at some point it's going to come back. The some point is after 5 seconds. It's going to come back and do this. Okay, so if you have some code in the next line that is dependent on the output of this, is going to give you undefined. It's not going to work. All right, so you have, when you're writing code, you have to structure in such a way, if this line is dependent on this function, you have to move this code inside that function. There is no other way to do it. All right, if I do not want this line to be executed unless this is complete, I have to move this code inside my function, whatever that function is, and then I'm going to get what I'm looking for. Okay, extremely important. We are going to look at some of, this is just the starting. All right, next week we are going to look at functions, and this is what JavaScript is based on. All right, it is non-blocking. It does not block on this function. What's going to happen if JavaScript was not this way? It's going to come over here and your whole web page will be blocked for 5 seconds. All right, you will have a nice wheel going around, but that's not how JavaScript works. Okay, so these timeout functions do not block the call and then kind of skip over and then come back to this function later on. Okay, you see this, your program completed, is going to wait 5 seconds and then it's going to show up.
Why don't you just write it last?
Why? It does not matter. The position of the code does not matter. Even if I move this last, it's not going to matter. Again, that's the point we need to understand. These functions are not waiting for anybody. It's going to come here, it's going to console log, it's going to come here, it's going to wait 5 seconds and then do this. Okay? Again, the position of this code actually does not matter in JavaScript. Again, these are functions that JavaScript is not going to wait on. It's going to find this function, skip over to the next line, and come back to this function when this condition happens. Okay? Now you can put 1 millisecond over here, so there's a chance this will be executed first. Let's see if this happens. Okay? It doesn't happen. Even with 1 millisecond, you see, this line gets executed fast. All right? Your computer, the execution of JavaScript is like super fast, so there's a very probably like improbable chance that this line is ever going to be executed before this line, because your processor is so fast that it's going to process everything and then going to come back over here. Right? 1 millisecond is a long duration in your computer world actually. So you see this function, whatever the code is, probably never gets called unless at any point in time. Okay? This is important. Okay, so whenever you're writing code, even in your next homework, this is the biggest issue I see. People are writing code that is dependent on this outside the set timeout function. It's not going to work. You have to, if there's a dependency, it has to go inside this function. Okay, let me go back to the, so that's kind of looks cleaner. Okay, questions? All right, this is just the beginning. We are kind of trending into what actually JavaScript does, and this is kind of called an async behavior, and I won't go into details of that word right now, and next week we have a whole class around it, but this is what it is. JavaScript, certain functions, JavaScript does not wait these to be completed. It's going to skip over, it's going to come and execute this line. So any code that you have at the bottom, the chances are is going to be definitely executed first before the code in this function gets called. Okay, keep this in mind. All right, any questions? Good. All right, there's a companion function of this one, and that is called clear timeout. Okay, what does clear timeout do? Clear timeout is used to cancel this thing out. Okay, it will cancel this whatever timer you set over here. Let's increase this to 5 seconds so I can actually see this. Okay, now clear timeout takes a parameter called a number, which is an ID. And what is the ID? it is the ID that is returned by set timeout function. So set timeout function, actually, if you see in the documentation over here, it says number. This last thing after the colon is your return type. You must have seen void last time you were looking in the class. In this case, it's a number. This means this is going to return me a number. You can call it anything, but this is the ID with which you can pass in over here, and that will cancel whatever you did over here. So let's suppose I pass in the ID which I'm capturing over here. What's going to happen? It comes over here, console logs this is fine, and then clears it out, right? 5 seconds haven't passed, and it basically said, hey, cancel the timeout that was created before. So that's why you will never see that console log come up ever now. Okay, if I move this, then you will see after 5 seconds your console log will come up. Okay, so clear timeout is used to cancel whatever the timer that you created. Okay, so since I'm using the clear, that console log will never show up. Again, why? I called a set timeout, I fixed it for 5 seconds, but right next somewhere else, I kind of canceled it out. So basically it cancels the timeout that you have set. Okay, and how do you cancel it out? You have to have this ID and then use this ID, right? Now, what does this tell me? I can have multiple timeouts, and each timeout is going to give me a different ID, and that's how clear timeout recognizes exactly which timeout to cancel. Okay, because you can have multiple set timeouts in your function or in your project. Clear timeout, you have to tell exactly which timeout you are trying to cancel. Okay. All right. Questions? Good. Yeah, this could be anything. Yeah. Set timeout ID. Yeah, you can name this anything. But I'm just identifying that you don't even need the word ID over here, but it's good because this is the unique ID by which the timeout goes ahead and cancels the one that it created. Okay, let me just show you one more thing, then we'll take a break, and then there's a whole exercise for this one. All right, so I'm going to create a object person similar to the Bob object. We'll just give it a property name Bob, and then a function. Let's call it. Okay, console log this. Okay, now if I call this person dot say hi, what is it going to log? It's going to log this function. Oh, this object. Okay, just from the previous example, same thing. All right, and you can see on the console it does it. Now, say hi is a function, and if you look at the syntax for set timeout, it requires a function. So basically, I can do the same thing. Can I pass this function? It requires a function, right? Can I do this? And then about 3 seconds. Okay, so the first one is our regular one. All right, this object. On line number 21, when I call person.sayHi, what happens? It goes ahead and console logs this, which is our object Bob over here. All right, same thing. But when I pass the same function in my set timeout, you see it outputs the window object. Right? So the thing to be careful over here is if you're calling a function that is part of an object, the scope of this is lost. It refers to the window object. That's the only caveat over here. So if you are calling a function which is part of an object, okay, in your set timeout. Again, why? Because set timeout, the first argument is a function, right? So I can totally call this. Why? Because this is a function. The only thing is, this over here loses focus. So that's why you see the window object over here. Okay, it's good to know this. Probably you won't ever use. Well, you know what? I take that back. There might be a case when you're trying to refer to some properties within the object, but you're passing it in your set timeout function. The thing is, it's going to refer to the wrong this. So just be careful with this one. Okay. 921 calls this, which is this object over here, the person. But if you pass the same function in your set timeout, it's going to lose focus and start referring to the window object. All right. Any questions? Set timeout. All right. So let's take a break. We'll come back at 8:15, and then as soon as you come in, we'll do the next exercise, which is on the timeout. Okay. Exercise number 8. Is What's up?
You jerk.
Huh? What
How dare
happened?
you chide us?
What? With what?
Chide.
Oh, the.
We're team zero though, no.
What?
We're team zero. Team zero, go. Team zero.
Team Zero. Yeah, that's going to be your name.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Team
that's
Zero.
our. Yeah. We're number one. Any
Zero.
array.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's. So I was actually giving you some. Like,
Yeah.
you're proud of that. Yeah.
We are. We are. We don't care. Team zero, number one.
Huh?
Number one.
Yeah.
Team
Yeah.
zero.
Very good. And then all the engineers are going to understand that joke and they'll be, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Joke. dying, so it has like
Yeah, care if I bug you for a minute?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I'm just so I'm working on like an RPG on my own. No, this isn't relevant to homework.
Okay.
And I have like you are facing like enemy name, blah blah blah. Goes through the stats.
Okay.
But is there a better way to do it? Like, could I do like if statements inside of it or something?
Inside of what?
Like line 261
Mm-hmm.
or like 260. Is there a better way to do it? Like, I want there to be different descriptions based on like whatever these stats are. Would I do an if statement inside of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll have to do it if it's a condition based, then yes, you'll have to do an if or a switch.
Because I want to be like if enemy strength is higher than whatever, then print this text.
Okay, yes, then you'll have to use an if statement.
So is if statements inside of this?
Yes, inside of another if.
Oh, that's really weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's how you would achieve it. You can extract this out into a function and do it over there, but you still need either an if or a switch statement.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I wanted to show you. I rewrote all this, so it's all switch statements.
Oh, yeah, looks nicer, right?
Yeah, it is.
Cleaner, and
Yeah, because it went from all this
right.
to just this.
Yeah, and then show me your function. Is there a function that is being repeated? So
Yeah.
you see the new game?
Yeah.
New game is getting called irrespective of what the case is. You can move this line and put it outside because it will get called no matter what the case is, right? So anything that gets called, no matter what the case is, you can,
So I can put it
Well,
outside.
after the switch statement.
After the switch statement?
Yeah, once the switch is complete at the bottom, and put it after the switch statement. Outside the switch.
Oh, so here.
Yeah. And why? Because it's going to be getting executed no matter what happens. So some case will happen and then it will come back and do a new game.
Okay, awesome.
You see?
Yeah, I see.
So it's kind of, just kind of, you don't have to worry about, just make sure it's being called in every single one, then you move it out. Looks like it's being called. Well, what about this one? Being called here. Yeah. New game is being called whatever the case is.
Yeah, because that's what updates the text on the screen.
Okay, so you can move it out. So this switch, so that it gets called once.
Awesome, thank you very much.
All right, so we are working on exercise number 8. You have to create a timer. Look at the unsolved one. It already has a template given to you. You have to add code and use a set timeout function. All right. There are different conditions for it. The conditions are based on the time. So 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then 15 seconds. Okay, so you have to create these 3 timeout functions and then call them accordingly. So this is already separated out into different JavaScript file. So 3 timeout functions, 5, 10, and 15 seconds, and then just a console log in each one of these methods. So somebody already completed. Kelly, was that you? Uh, who is that? Johanna, is that you? Chris is making sure nobody, I don't hear it. All right, looks like people are completing. So before I'm going to complete this step. I'm just going to console log this so that we can actually see before I put my timeout functions. For example, I'll complete the 5 second, just do a console log. I won't worry about the jQuery. Oops. So console log, 10 seconds, 10 seconds left. Okay, console log, 5 seconds left. And then last one is, oh, that's it, 5, okay, where's the 15? Oh. And then this console log, let's say time's up. Okay, and this will be called after 15 seconds. All right, so I'm not going to worry about the jQuery. The more important is how do we call these timeout functions? How do you do it? Oops. Function format. Okay. The first function is called after 5 seconds. Set timeout. The first argument is a function. And which function do I need to call? 5 seconds. This is my function. So I'm going to call 5 seconds function. No parentheses required. And the second argument is the number of seconds, number of milliseconds. So it's going to be 1000 multiplied by, I'm looking for 5 seconds, so this is going to be 5. Okay. The second function, same thing. Set timeout. This is going to call the 10 seconds function. 10 seconds function. And this time, I'm calling it after 10 seconds. All right. Similarly, the last function, set timeout. Okay, the first argument is a function, and this time I'm calling the time a function, and the second argument is number of milliseconds that I want to wait on this one, and this is 15. So I'm just going to multiply my 1000 by 15 seconds. Now you will see console log coming up after 5 seconds, after 10 seconds, and then finally the MP3 file that is included should play. Okay, volume is turned off, but it should be working. Let's see. Oops. And 5, 15, and then this. Oh, uncaught exception.
Basically, it's a browser thing where you don't click, it's expecting you to just interact somehow with the page.
Ah.
So if you don't click into the
Oh, okay. So that's why they have these since I didn't include the IDs and I'm not modifying the HTML. So that's why this error comes up. Okay, but more important is I'm able to run my timeout functions. Okay, any questions? Everybody understand how to use a timeout function? All right, any questions before we move on? All right, so let's look at the second timer method that's called interval. And that method is called set interval. The difference between timeout and interval is timeout adds a delay basically, right? You guys saw that the number of seconds or milliseconds that you pass in is going to call that function after that much delay. Okay. Set interval will repeatedly call that function after a delay. Okay. So if I call my set interval method and pass in number of milliseconds or seconds over here, it's going to keep repeating that function every after this much delay. Okay, and it's going to keep calling that function forever and ever until you go ahead and stop your web page. Okay, that's what the set interval does. So let's go ahead and I'm going to quickly code a set interval and then we'll do an exercise on that. Let's do time interval. Again, this has nothing to do with jQuery. Where did I add over? Okay, I'll come back to it. Okay, so it's my index. I have a time interval JavaScript file. No, I don't want ESLint running. Okay, similar to set timeout, it follows kind of same arguments. The only difference is called set time interval. It takes in a function as the first argument and then number of milliseconds. All right, so let's go ahead and create a function. Call calling this function. Okay, let's go ahead and console log this function is okay, same thing, create a function and then I'm going to pass this function inside my set interval, and the second argument is the number of seconds. So let's go ahead and do this thing. Okay, same syntax as your timeout function. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so it's going to go ahead and call this function. You see the two, this is Chrome. If you have the exact same string, it kind of combines them. But basically it is console logging and keep calling this function every after 3 seconds. Okay, so it's console logging this text again and again and again after every 3 seconds. Okay, that's what set interval does. All right, so it keeps calling this function after the set number of milliseconds, and then it keeps running forever until you stop it, and you stop the browser, kill the application, otherwise it's going to keep running. Okay, similar syntax. The only difference is this function is going to be called forever and with a delay of these many seconds or milliseconds. Okay, any questions on this? Similar to that one, the only difference, keep calling it. All right, so now the companion function for this, we saw clear timeout. The companion function for this is clear interval. Okay, again, it follows exactly the same concept you have to get an ID. Set interval returns an ID. Okay, and then you can pass this ID to clear interval, and then it's this set interval never gets called. Okay. I'll do a clear example, maybe like I put some buttons and then so that you can see like a timer. All right, start timer and stop timer. You'll see that this is not running, but basically you can see I started an interval, but then immediately I'm calling clear interval, so it cancels out exactly the same way as timeout does. Okay. This follows the same logic. Anything that is after this function is going to be written before your interval gets executed. Okay. Same as timeout. Right. The only difference is this is the repeating function. All right. Any questions? Good. All right. So let me uh, add a button, kind of make it a like a stopwatch kind of deal. So let me stop this so that you can see the clear interval is working. So in this case, I'm going to use some jQuery. All right. Again, these functions are part of JavaScript, not part of jQuery. All right. And then I'm going to add a couple of buttons. I'm going to give them an ID. I'm going to say start. Okay. And then I have another button called stop. Okay. You guys can see my buttons. Okay. Much better. So I have these two buttons. Let's go to my console where my timer is like running again and again. I'm going to stop that. But I'm now when I click start, I'm going to start my timer, my interval, and then when I click stop, I'm going to call the clear interval and basically stop this logic. Okay, right now it just like keep running and again. Okay. Let's use, since we are using jQuery, I'm going to follow, it's going to take time, but I'm going to still follow the standards. I'm going to start with document.ready. Okay. And then my document ready takes a callback function. All right. Format it, and I'm going to move all of this code eventually inside it. Let's comment this out for now. Okay. Now in this, let's go ahead and move this function inside here. Do I need this function? No. I can keep this outside. So I'm going to keep this function here. Let's rename this to start. Okay, and then I'm going to create another function called stop. And then I'm going to call this function when I click the stop button. Okay. Function, call this function at interval, and this is what I'm going to pass to my using set interval. Let's go ahead and remove this one. Okay. I'm still building it. I'm kind of going through it, but I want to call a function when I press start, and then I call my set timer in it, set interval, and then call clear interval when somebody clicks the stop button. Okay. So before I do this, I need the two click methods, right? So let's go ahead and code that out. Function is dot on, okay, and then I'm looking for an ID of start and stop. Okay, so hash start, and then I'm going to stop the stop one as well. Okay, you can see how I start coding. It's not complete, it's actually incorrect, but it's right now it's small in one line. I can visualize, I can make sure my parentheses are complete, there's no error over here, and then I'm going to complete these. Okay, the first argument is your string, and the second argument is our callback function. Okay, and then same thing over here. The first argument is a string click, and then the second argument is a callback function. Okay. Let's do this. Instead of my callback function, I'm going to call the methods that I created at the bottom. Okay. So it will be easier for you guys to see. Okay. But does everybody understand? You can replace it with a callback function, with the anonymous function, and it will still work the same. Okay. So my on-click events, I'm calling this method when somebody clicks on start, and I'm calling this method where somebody clicks on stop. Okay. Let's change this and say start button click. Okay, and then when somebody clicks start, I want my set interval to kick off. So I will say set interval. Okay, and then set interval takes in a function, so I'm going to pass this function, and then every 3 seconds. Oops. Okay. And somebody clicks stop, I'm going to say stop clicked. And then if I want to stop my timer, what do I have to do? Clear interval, right? Clear interval, so that but what do I need to pass in for clear interval? I need to pass in an ID. And how do I obtain that ID? It's coming from this method. Okay, so if I do let's say interval ID is equal to this, and then I can pass this over here. Oh, interval ID. Does this look correct? What is wrong? Yay, scope. Thank you. Yeah, so since this is a LED, it's inside this, it's not visible outside it. So I need to create a global variable so that this is accessible. So let's go ahead and put this over here. Let interval ID something. Okay. None of these functions is being called, so this should be okay. All right, any other issues you see? So when I click start, it should call this function. This function is going to go ahead and start calling whatever the function that is being passed every 3 seconds. And then when I click stop, that timer, that this logging should like stop after that. Shouldn't be working, so that this function is called using set interval. Okay, let's see, start start button click, and then every 3 seconds I'm getting this back. No, let's do this. me add a counter so you guys can actually see in a single line. Let's say count is equal to 1. And then add count here. Dollar count dot. So this way you will see a number showing up. And this would be in a separate. All I'm doing is why, because so that Chrome doesn't combine there. Shows up in a different line. Okay, let's clear this, come back here. And then what I'm missing, I need to increment the count so that every time the count changes. This time, so what am I doing? It's going to go ahead and do a 1, update 2, 3, 4. Now the whole string is different every single time. This is the only reason I'm using a count, so that we can see the logs not being combined but like separate lines. Okay, so start button click. After 3 seconds, this function is called, right? Then 2, count increases again. It's going to keep going forever. Okay, and now if I press the stop button, it should stop logging. So I press the stop button, stop click, and it canceled out the interval. Okay, so this is how we use set interval. Any questions? Good. All right, let's do the next activity, which is number, what number is it? Number 10. So number 10 says you need to create a stopwatch, kind of similar thing that I showed you. Just on the similar pattern, you might have a start and stop. Let's take a look at that. This is activity number 10. Okay, so you don't have to worry about the HTML. Start, stop, and reset button. Okay, so at this point there is no jQuery. Instead of, there is a JavaScript function that is being used called onLoad, and basically this, as soon as the page loads, it's going to start calling this. Okay, we can replace this with dollar document dot ready. It's kind of similar thing. Okay, but that's more important is the stop, start, reset. Start with the three. Start, stop, and reset. I think record lap is more like a bonus. So start with the start, then complete the stop method, and then the reset. First of all, let me go ahead and run this to see what actually shows up. Oh, look at this fancy timer. No bootstrap, that's why no response there. What is this? Can somebody add bootstrap and send me that? All right, so start, doesn't do anything, stop, nope. So complete the start button and it should set this timer running. Let's see, where's the start? Okay. Use set interval to start the count and set the clock to running. Let's see if you guys figure out what the to do is actually saying. Set the timer. Set interval, this is easy. So what does it mean? Set the clock to running. Again, take few minutes, understand the code that is already given before you actually start coding. Make sure you understand all the variables that are there and what each one of them is doing. Variable that will hold our set interval, okay, prevents the clock from being sped up unnecessarily. Reset. So on line 32, I want to call the set interval, right? So set interval takes two arguments. The first is a function. What function do I need to call? This is inside the start. I cannot call. Huh? Count. Yes. So if you scroll down, if you look at the whole code, there's a count method that I need to call. Okay, that's what the instruction is saying. So call the function count, and then every second. It's a timer, right? It's a stopwatch, so it shows up every second. Okay. Now my count function is actually not done, but I can still test it out. Let's complete the statement. So use the set interval, completed this, and set the clock to running. How do I set the clock to running? What does this mean? This means basically setting this variable to true. Right now it is set to false. This translates to saying clock running is equal to true. That's what it means. Set the clock to running. How do you set the clock to running? If you look at the variables on the top, somewhere in the code, this variable is being used to identify if the clock is running or not. Okay. So when you click the start button, you want to start the interval, and then you want to say, oh, the clock is running now. So that's what it means. Okay. Now, if I look at my count function, it requires all these to-dos, but I just want to test it out to make sure that code is working. So I'm going to just do a console log for now and see, make sure this is working. So I'm going to say count function is called. Okay, so if I click start button, it should keep calling this function every 1 second. Let's see, start, count is click, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this means this code is good. I still need to complete this, but this kind of verifies that. Okay. The next thing is stop function, use a clear function. Oh, I'm missing something. Okay, so use a clear function, pass in the ID. When you stop this should stop. And then you go ahead and work on your count function. Remember, set interval returns an ID, and the variable is already there declared for you. It's called interval ID, line number 12. So this is done. All right, so how do we do the stop, clear interval? All right, and then pass in an ID. The ID is on line number 12, interval ID. Okay, and set the clock to not be running. Over here we are setting the clock to running. This means I just need to set it to false. Oops. Clock running is equal to false. And this is done. Okay, let's test this out. If I say start, shows up counts 2, 3, 4, 5, keep going up. If I press stop, still keep going on. Stop. Did anybody get the stop working? What am I missing in the stop? Huh? The ID. But I have the ID here. Setting. I'm missing the ID here. I don't have an ID. This one. So I need to capture this ID. So right now, basically, the ID is what is it? Nothing. So let's try now. Start. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, stop. And then it stops at 6. Okay, so my start and stop are working. I just use console log just to test this function out. And then the next step would be to actually show up on the screen. But that's mostly jQuery and you're trying to update this count. Other than the bonus, this should be related to the set interval. Okay, we'll take a few more minutes. We'll try to complete the count method, but this is your starting and stopping method. I don't think there's any change in these methods after this. So increment time 1 by 1. It should be easy. Time plus plus. Get the current time. Pass that into time converter function, which is at the bottom. You don't have to worry about how it's working. You just need to pass in the string. No, it's a number. Get the current time, pass that into time converter, and save the result in a variable. And my current time is this. So get the current time, pass that into time converter. So time converter function, pass that time that I captured on line number 58, and then you're going to save that to a variable. So let time converted is equal to this. Okay, so I did computed this. Use the variable you just created to show the converted time and display div. Okay, so dollar ID display. Okay, and then dot text, and then time converted. Okay, go ahead and remove this console log. Already figured this one out, so that should be good. Let's see. Is this how you guys did it? Time converted, then show it on the display. And this time if I don't need the console anymore, so I'm going to close this. If I do start, this should start changing. Let's see. Oh, there you go. Fancy. And then if I press stop, okay, start again. Okay, start from there, and then I can stop again. Okay, reset doesn't work. Reset should put it back to 0, 0, I'm guessing. But any questions on this? Everybody got the timer to start and stop? Let me just complete the reset, and then I'm going to leave the bonus part out. Go ahead and try the bonus later on once you are comfortable with this one. Let's see, where's my reset? Change the display div to 0, 0. So dollar hash display dot text to 0 distance. I'm just going to copy this. Okay. Changes to this, and then that should be it. So now starts my timer. Stop, reset, puts it back to 0, and then start again, starts again. All right, any questions? Again, set interval. This is how you do a stopwatch, timer questions, or a game that has some kind of a time limit to it. So this is how you would be doing that. Okay. Your next homework, we'll look at that on Thursday. It kind of uses these concepts. Okay, so set timeout just runs once after a delay. Set interval keeps running that after a delay. Okay. How do you stop both functions? Clear timeout and clear interval. Any questions on this one before we move on? Okay. Yes. Count function. So the first thing I said, increment the time by 1, and there's a variable on the top, time, so I incremented that. And then it said, get the current time, which is this, pass that into a time converter function, which is at the bottom, but I don't have to worry about. The only thing is I just need to pass this and then save the result in a variable. So I pass this time into this. Apparently it converts it into a string. And then on your display, it says use a variable you just created, show the converter time into the display div, and I just put it in the text. Okay? Good? All right. Let's do the last exercise. This is a little bit more challenging. Okay? Um, let's see, this is number 11, and that should take you to the end of the class. This is called slideshow. Let me show you how this is actually working. So this is how, it's kind of a little bit timer related. The only thing is this is now a slideshow. It's basically an image. If you start this, okay, it's going to go through and show you different images with this nice view, kind of showing you that it's okay. And as soon as you stop it, the slideshow kind of stops over there. Okay, this is the solution. So take a look at the unsolved one and see if you can complete this exercise. I'll post the solution later. Okay, but take a look at this. A little bit more challenging, but it kind of combines all the concept from today's class. Okay. All right, so work on this. This should take you until 9:30, and then that's the last exercise for today. Let me see. Yeah, that should be the last one. And on Thursday, it's kind of a little bit different topic. It's more related to the interview process. Again, this week has been more like a revision week, so I hope everybody is taking advantage of this because come Saturday, we are kind of been looking on some very interesting but a little bit difficult stuff, especially related to web APIs. What is an API? How do you get information from the web onto your website? Okay. Um, Thursday still going to be a little bit easy. I'm going to walk you through how the interview process works. I know it's kind of a little bit early, but take down few points, and then we can come back to that lesson again in future, maybe like week 20, 21, when we are kind of closer to the interview process also. Okay, so let's start on this activity number 11, and I'll see you guys on Thursday after this. Let me go ahead and open this exercise. So you already have these images given. You can use these, or you can use if you want something different. Let me run this unsolved and see what happens. Okay, no images loading, nothing, just 2 buttons. Oh, it uses Bootstrap. That's nice. Basically, just go through the comments and keep mark. As soon as you get done, I like to change this to like done so that I know I've completed this part and then move forward. Put links to images. Where's my images? Okay, so links to these. Nothing to do here. This is account, show image. Use jQuery to run the start slideshow when we click the start button. So two on-click functions here. Will display whatever image it's given. Okay, it's not like too, doesn't look like too bad actually. Now I look at it. So if you're not sure how do you put the links over here, you would say something like dot slash, and then it's under the images folder, images slash and something, bootstrap png. Oops, let me put a comment here. Bootstrap.png, right? So this would become your images inside this string. Either dot slash or without the slash, you can try both, but I think this is what gets passed over here. So basically you will kind of create these links over here inside it. So, oops. So I can put this, it's going to be my first image. My second image, GitHub logo. Slash images slash GitHub dash logo. And then my logo underscore JavaScript. Logo underscore JavaScript dot png. Do this to new line so that you can clearly see what's in my. This is better. I'm missing this thing. So this is how you put the links. Okay. Next is the buttons, and then call those functions inside those button clicks. That's right. Use jQuery to run the start slideshow when we click the start button. So this is your click event. Use the jQuery click event and then call the function start slideshow. Right now, start slideshow doesn't have anything. I would just put a console log and test it out to make sure that my click events are working, and then come back to it and finish these two methods. So when you click the start button, what's the ID behind the start button? Oh, start and stop. So dollar dot on. Okay, jQuery click event. Give it an ID of, and the ID is start, and then on click, you're going to call a callback function, and the function that we are calling is start slideshow. Start slideshow. Okay, and then slideshow is not complete. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a console log to make sure that my above method is working. I will say start slideshow called, just for debugging purposes. And then now if I call start, it should console log this thing. Okay. So every time I hit this button, it calls this console log. It's of course not complete. I need to add the set interval, but at least I know this line is good and completed. So do the same thing with the stop button, and then come back and update the start slideshow over here. So this is done. See, dollar dot on. Stop, click, and this time I'm calling the stop slideshow. Same thing, test it out. So I'm going to just console log for now. Stop slideshow called. Okay, so start is working, stop is also working. Now you can go ahead and do the start interval in these functions. Use show image to hold the set interval to run the next image. So what is show image? Okay, so this is the ID. So call the set interval. Which method are you going to call? Next image. And then give it any time that you want. So use the show image variable to hold the set interval. Set interval takes the first argument is a function, and it is saying call the next image. So next image function, and then set any time. So 3 seconds. Okay. I don't need this console because I already tested this out, so I'm going to remove this, and this should be done. And then on my stop, call the clear interval, pass in the ID, show image, and that should be it. So don't need the console. Let's see if I say start. It should change the image after 3 seconds. Oh, never mind. I have a whole method that is left to complete. Increment the count by 1, which is count plus plus. Count plus plus. Show the loading GIF in the image holder div. Okay. Let's see. Dollar image. I'm just going to copy this so I don't make a mistake. Image holder dot html, and then show that GIF. So this is going to be in my image tag. Source is equal to use escape characters dot slash images slash what is it called, loading GIF. So loading dot GIF. Okay, and there was a width somewhere. Where's the is it over here? Okay, I'll use this. Give it a width also. Let's make it. Okay, and then use the set timeout function. So this time it's the timeout. So this is done. Instead of interval, this is set timeout. So set time out, takes in a function, and this time I'm giving a display function. So display image after 1 second, so that's going to be 1000 milliseconds. Okay, so it's just going to show, and then if the count is the same as the length of the image array, reset the count to 0. Okay, so I need an if statement. If the count is the same as, if the count is same equal to the length of the image array. So image, what is the array called? It's called images. So images dot length. If these are same, reset the counter to 0. So count is equal to 0. Okay, and this should be done. Let's see if it works now. So start. Oh, there it is. Oh, something happened to the next one. JS shows up. Bootstrap. What's my second one? GitHub dash logo. I probably made a typo somewhere. Let's see. GitHub dash logo. Oh, it's a JPEG. Thank you. JPEG. Okay. Let's try this again. Start. Oh, there it is. And then I think I quoted my stop one also. So let's see, stop, and I should stop this. Okay, that was it. Any questions on this? Display image. This was already done. I didn't do anything over here. It is what? No, it should actually take it from here. This array on the top. So display image is looking inside that array, and it should pull these images from here. So I had a typo, and Hannah pointed out it's a JPEG versus a PNG. That was the issue with my array.